The Fish Market Street Fight covered recently. Shark Boy and Curry Man against Team 3D. There were fish involved. Fish.
Yes.
In the early days of TNA, you guys would have what I guess was essentially a play on War Games, just without the cage. And it was called S&M, Sadistic Madness. The goal of the match is to make everyone bleed on a team before they could be pinned or submitted. And the blood had to be from the result of an offensive move by the opponent. The first time it happens is when Triple X teams up with the Harris brothers to take on the New Church, Sandman, and Perry Saturn. This is the 38th weekly pay-per-view. TNA at the time was under a lot of scrutiny from the internet wrestling community, the dirt sheet writers, and even some wrestlers have been pretty vocal about the amount of blood on the shows. But I'm sure the thinking is, hey, it's a pay-per-view. We got to turn it up. We got to give them something special. But this almost feels like you're thumbing your nose at them. Oh, yeah? Well, we're going to make sure everybody bleeds before the match can even really get going.
Look, and I'm going to go back to the Fish Market match. The full context of that is the pay-per-view was done in Boston.
Right.
So we kind of, we could have called it a street fight. 3D was in it against the guys. But we said, let's just add a little garnish and a little salt and pepper and spice it up a little bit. And Curry Band was in it anyway. And Shark Boy was in it. So that's how the Boston, and we said, hey, if we're going to do this, go to Fish Market, get real fish. But anyhow, it was entertaining. Bubba and Devon were great. They took the fish shots, and Don West said, oh my God, a flounder across the head, or whatever the sound bites were. That was that. But the early days of TNA, yes, the ebbs and flows of it's only pay-per-view or it's strictly pay-per-view. So we got to give them, you know, what they're not going to see on traditional TV. But at times we pushed the gas too hard and had too much blood. So there was an ebb and flow of, did we give them too much blood, or is that not enough type deal? So this is one of those ebbs where it was probably too much.
The match later morphs into the Doomsday Chamber of Blood between Abyss and Matt Morgan. So we've got a second version of the match. We're calling it Doomsday Chamber of Blood. Let's talk about a little more old school TNA. The Ultimate Sin match. This went down at the Asylum in Nashville. Team Extreme takes on the New Church. Barbed wire is wrapped around the ropes. There's a ton of weapons. And we often talk about how Memphis helped influence ECW. But man, this feels like, I don't know. This feels like Ian Rotten almost. This feels like Axel Rotten almost. The barbed wire around the ropes in Nashville. Was there ever anybody on the writing team or in the sphere of influence who did feel like the blood was too much?
Yes. I mean, I mean, among others, I would always say, hey man, too much is too much. Gratuitous blood is just that. It desensitizes our audience. It's never going to mean anything. I also think that about too many gimmick matches, but also think that about, oh my God, we just gave them 7 straight wrestling matches with kind of relatively. Conrad, I got bad news.
What's the bad news?
This is the first time we've recorded on a Sunday with the Titans playing. And the Texans just had a walk-off touchdown, and our quarterback got hurt.
Man, I mean, respectfully, all y'all have done is a lot of losing in Tennessee.
Oh,
collegiate or NFL. Like, aren't you used to it now? Why is this still a shocker? Wow. I got some breaking news to tell you off air about Santa Claus when we finish recording.
Wait, they called it back. I think they called it back. Are they calling it back? I don't know. Anyway, too much blood's too much blood, pal. It just is. There's no ifs, ands, or buts. But I think you can go that way with too much blood, too much. You can make it boring. I mean, anyway, variety's the spice of life, but you have to really have a good recipe because you can air too much way in multiple ways and you have a really flat show or a bad show, bad taste. Back to our Chris and James, America's Most Wanted. That just really turned the folks.
Well, I'll tell you what, we're in the fourth quarter of our program here, and the Titans are in the overtime, about to lose to the Texans.
No, they called it back at 16-16, but they're in field goal range, but it's all right.
That's where I was getting to. Do you want to do the Vita spot?
The what?
Well, I'm trying to shield for some goddamn advertisers here. If you'll just give me a minute.
Okay, shit. My God. I'm enjoying the hell out of this. We're not even going to get to the Ultimate X today, are you?
I mean, we can. I'd rather talk about the electric cage. The electric cage match, I know, was something that happened down in Mexico, and you saw it down in Mexico. I think they even did versions of this in Continental, but you did it in TNA too. It's Team 3D against LAX at Lockdown. Was this just a failure in execution? I mean, it sounds really exciting.
Complete failure in execution. It was a time in my life where a lot going on personally in 07, and it was, I'd seen it in Mexico, and to Dutch and Vince's defense, they really didn't have a full context and production manager, and there was a vision for it, but I wasn't around to really make it come to life. And I'm not saying I would have the fix all, but we could have worked out the kinks had we had 6 P's. Proper planning prevents piss poor performance, and we didn't properly plan to execute this match. When you see it in Mexico, it's not perfect, and they've had some great ones, and then they've had some ones that really laid egg, but the concept is good.
What about the concept of feast or fired? Where were you at on that? We haven't really spent much time talking about that as a gimmick match.
So there's and let me ask you, well, it's almost every time this match is kind of discussed in an open forum, you hear the statement, now why would anybody enter a match that had the opportunity, there's a chance of them getting fired? And I always think, does a talent really have the authority to say, no, I'm not going to be in this match? Because isn't that breach of contract? You know what I mean? And the title is lost. But
is that really a surprise? I mean, Jeff, they were 5-8 when the day started.
I've tried to be really nice to you, Conrad.
They're 5-9. You're acting surprised. Let me give you a spoiler. They're going to be 5-10 next week.
Oh man, there's just really no.
I'm just saying they're going to lose to the Seahawks on Christmas Eve. You know it, and I know it. It's not a secret.
We were winning this entire game. This is the first time they've taken the lead.
The storytelling. It's a work. It's a work.
You ain't kidding. It is.
Hey, real deal.
Feast or fired. I love the concept because from a creative perspective, you know how talent will appear on a show and then you just won't see them. They're gone forever.
Yes. Yes.
Well, that is not really, that's not good continuity.
Right.
So it is a simple way to have a stakes battle royal that you can create 4 stories out of it. And you get a tag title, an X title, a heavyweight title, and then one guy is getting his pink slip. And out of the pink slip, how many times one of the best angles Dusty Rhodes was ever in? I don't know if it was the different setups that a person loses a loser leave town and then comes back under the hood. And I'm not saying you do that every time on Feast or Fired when you do the fired briefcase, but there's a way to create a new character, a new story. This guy gets fired. I mean, it's a launching pad, if you will. The whole concept was, hey, this is going to be at the end of the year. And I know a lot of people are like, why in the world? Well, where'd this ever come from? There was a time that we would get the mandate from Dallas, cut the roster. We got too many guys. We got too many talent. And Vince and Dutch and me and others would say, we don't think we have enough, but we get it because we've got to cut. You got to try to balance the budget. You can't go over this. You can't go over that. And then there's also the side of the talent where talent goes, hey man, I'm under contract, but I'm only getting booked 2 out of the 4 days out of the TV days. So anyway, it's the juggling act. So if we're in that phase of you got to cut talent, okay, let's give a reason why one of these guys is not going to be around. So anyway, not perfect, but I thought it was a simple way to create 4 stories out of a battle royal.
You were talking a little bit about psychology. and like, why would any talent, blah blah blah. I sort of found myself doing that when I was stating over the weekend how much I enjoyed Vikingo and Black Taurus at the Ring of Honor show. I mean, it was a crazy spectacle. Now there was a spot early in the match where Black Taurus power bombed not Commander, but Vikingo on the floor on one of the mats. But I mean, he launched him like an old school jackknife power bomb where Kevin Nash would just throw dudes across the ring, except not landing on the ring, landing on the concrete.
Damn.
And in my head, I mean, the rest of the match, you could tell Vikingo, Lord bless him, he was really limping around. He clearly hurt his back there.
Okay.
I don't think it's a secret that he was hurt, and allegedly you could even see it backstage. But that's not a surprise to me. But what was a surprise is when he tried to do a move on the ropes and he lost his balance and he tried again and he tried again and then he got it. People online were sort of dismissing the entire match because they felt like that one thing he had to try over twice really took them out of the match. And in the confines of a traditional wrestling match, I get it. Psychology would say, well, why would Black Taurus just stand there? But that wasn't a regular wrestling match. That was a lucha match. And in lucha, that's totally fine.
Mm-hmm.
So you got to see it through that lens and understand a little more of how lucha works compared to wrestling. But at the same time, those guys would say, oh, well, it was on a wrestling pay-per-view in American. I get you. But you have trouble suspending your disbelief for that, but not for anything else that you see, even as simple as a fucking Irish whip. Like, if you and I were in a real fight and I tried to like jerk you by the shoulder across over here, you wouldn't just take off running that way. Like, that's just silly. Like, where do we draw the line? And I just think that as I see people getting caught up in these little details, I got a friend who lives a few hours north of me, and he always says creative is subjective. If we want to try to poke holes in anything, we can, or we could just enjoy it. There's an idea.
Well, you said way early in the episode, all that Memphis SHIT, right?
Yes.
I think actually Meltzer complimented my dad's booking her not long ago, but Uncle Dave will also clown on Memphis too. But I think at the end of the day, and this is what I was born and raised on, is that back to that variety that, I think back in the day, people didn't have the mindset, I'm going to go watch this show. And that's why I think my role as a performer in 2023 is to walk through the curtain and tell a story from the time I walk through the curtain to the time I get to the back. There's other guys that walk to the ring, no promo, no nothing. So their segment is performance based, and then there's story based, and then there's maybe violence based, if you will. I think it's all what you said. It's all subjective. So what do you like? But the culture we live in, it's just not like wrestling. Hey, I kind of like this and I kind of like that, so I'm not going to comment because I like it. But the stuff I don't like, oh boy, I am going to chirp away, and the vocal minority comes in play. They're going to talk more about what they don't like as opposed to what they like.